Just for disclaimer, the following clip might be sensitive to some viewers, so they might wanna skip it. And as we get onto the video, please, as usual, do me a favor, like, comment, share, subscribe. It's all for free. Help us grow this channel. And most important is not only about growing the channel, but it's also about making sure that people hear the truth and they get saved. I mean, the Bible says, the Bible tells us that the truth shall set you free. So let people hear the truth, and then they will be set free from their bondages. So without wasting your time, my time, let's get on with it. So the reason we find black people doing things like this it is because our identity has been shifted. Now tell me if your grandmother will make you do this. So this is the reason why I'm going to tell you that African spirituality is more like self-sabotage. It's you sabotaging yourself in the name of this is my culture. So now it's a sad thing watching people acting like animals. I think that other one was acting like a dog there. You see, the enemy has mastered one thing. Fighting against us through identity. That is usually his entry point. That's why in African spirituality, the only thing that they usually use is identity, right? That's usually their ammunition. That's why when they come to you, they tell you about your identity and all that. When you go to the book of Genesis, one thing you'll see is that he first attacks the woman's identity. When you go to Matthew 4, one thing you'll realize is that he attacks Jesus based on his identity. And when you go back to Genesis 1 verse 26, for example, here's what happens. God makes man in his own image. So if God made you in your own image, it means that you are like him. However, when the devil comes, he says to the woman, God does not want you to eat here because you're going to be like him. So already he's attacking that main point. His entry point is what? Identity. When he goes to Jesus, he says the very same thing. He says, if you are a son of God. So in most cases, he comes through identity. In most cases, when identity is lost, we take anything to replace it. When identity is lost, that's why at times, if you do not know your identity in the Lord, you resort to being something else. Right? That's why you resort to being a drunkard. God did not create you to be a drunkard. You resort to be a fornicator. God did not create you to be a fornicator. For example, Genesis 1:26, God says to the man, he said two things, that let us make man in our image. The second thing he says that let them have dominion over everything. When you jump to chapter 2 of the same book, on verse 20, he lets Adam name the animals there. However, here's one thing that kills us today. Because the first thing he attacks is identity. He comes to you and says, you are an African. You cannot worship Jesus Christ. However, you have to come to African spirituality. What happens is you now start, mind you were given authority over animals. You were given dominion over animals. So you drop your dominion. You now start bowing to animals. You now go bow before a goat and tell it your problems. You now drink a goat's blood because you believe that by doing that you'll be free. You know why? Because of identity has been shifted. You now surrender to dead people. You now surrender to plants. You now surrender to creation. You know why? Because identity has been lost. However, if identity was still there, you are never gonna bow before a goat. You are never gonna bow before a tree, hugging trees. When you tell you that these things are demonic, you don't wanna listen. So that's all I had to say today. Until the next one, don't forget to subscribe. God bless.